Hello everybody and welcome back to G4G on YouTube. Today we're taking another look at Marvel Avengers Alliance through Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. So in the last video, I said that I'd be doing a video coming soon on what was the most broken item in Marvel Avengers Alliance history, and a lot of you guys that responded with one particular thing: the Cosmic Cube. That made me believe that how you guys interpreted that question was to be what was the most overpowered item in Marvel Avengers Alliance history. So in other words, you were taking it to mean the meme version of broken or busted. That isn't actually what I was going for. I really truly meant, what do you think was the most broken, as in rule breaking, item within Marvel Avengers Alliance history? So, that being said, I'm going to give you guys just a few seconds over here, about 10 seconds before I proceed, for you to go ahead and get your guesses in. What you can do is you can flag this particular time of the video. You know, when you see comments that have like the 1:38 in there, and tag this part of the video with your guess and use the time marker to show me that you're guessing before I actually get into the video. Now that you know the rules, and that is what was the most rule-breaking item in Marvel Avengers Alliance history. If you were an old fan of my videos back when the game was live, you would know this. If you ever came to the Twitch stream in 2015 and 2016, you would also know this item. So go ahead, take about 10 seconds to put your guesses in, tag this particular second of the video, and put it in. And I'll just wait. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to slowly give you guys an idea. So, who you see on the screen is kind of a hint. And then I'm going to go over to somebody else. And I'm going to give you another hint over here. And then, I think I passed them already. I got to give you guys, well, no, I don't think I've passed them yet. I'm going to give you another hint. So, Jean Grey, Angel, Valkyrie. What do you think the hint might be? And you got about 5 seconds. Okay, so time's up to actually guess what the item is. I've kind of led you down a path. What do Angel, Valkyrie, and Phoenix all have in common to a certain degree? Obviously, it's not going to be mutants. It's more what's in their kit. So, have you figured it out yet? Here's another hint. The Son of the Demon set. Still haven't figured it out yet? It is the Chalice of Souls. The Chalice of Souls was the single most broken item in Marvel Avengers Alliance history. Why was it broken? Is because it screwed with the rules that the game set forth. Now, there was one other particular item that tended to break the rules, and it was a minor one, and I'll bring it up. We'll get into this one first. So the Crooked Branch said that whenever you use magical abilities, you heal. Now, this was broken because nothing else acted this way in terms of conforming to the rules. There was an ISO, I believe it was a purple ISO, that says when you do magic, you get healed. But there were certain things that would not cause the heal to go off. Things like quick action, and if you counterattacked using a magical item. So, say the Devourer, for example. The Devourer was magic. And if you had, see right there, magic. If you had that ISO that says when you do magic, you get a heal, and you counterattack with the Devourer because somebody bleeding attacked you, and then you countered or followed up with the Devourer, you would not heal. However, with the Crooked Branch, that wasn't true. You healed off of anything magical, even if it was a quick action. So that was pretty busted. It kind of goes to show that as much as we loved Playdom, and as much as now we give them a ton of credit for things, there were definitely bugs in their code at times. And this is something that I wonder if Goofy will begin to unify after he gets a release candidate out there. Now, he's always stated that he's not particularly going to mess with buffs and nerfs of characters, with the exception of the characters that we got at the very, very end of the game, like Adam Warlock and White Tiger. They are going to be scaled back by the development team because they were never really meant for general use. We pretty much know Playdom at that point kind of gave up quality control because they knew the game was over and they were never going to see the light of day in PvP, so why balance them? I wonder if he's going to fix situations like that and unify it, because why does the ISO say it heals on magic, but then it only heals on some magic, but when you have the Crooked Branch's reverberation, it actually does heal on everything? Weird misapplication of the rules. Well, the Chalice of Souls doesn't have a little minor bustedness to it like that. It is full on fucking broken. So if you're not familiar with the Chalice of Souls, it was part of the Son of the Demon set, which was a Spec Ops that was around in the original game back from March 25th to March 28th. So, almost 7 years ago. Kind of interesting. And it was Special Operations 11, which was the Damien one, or the Damon Hellstrom one. Just in case you weren't playing at that time. It gave you things like the Scourging Gaze, the Devourer, the Hammering Nail, the Heir of Hell, which was a upgraded version of the Hammering Nail, and the Chalice of Souls. And the way the set worked, it was actually pretty popular once Pesty came along, because it would seal in these debuffs. You couldn't take them away. So by wearing parts of the set, you were putting a debuff on the agent, and that debuff unlocked something in another part of the set. So the phylactery would put rebuff on the person that you cast the phylactery on, or the chalice on, if you were slowed. In order to be slowed, you needed to have the Heir of Hell, which caused slowed on the agent. But if the agent had exposed, you had a chance to counter and apply Soulfire to the enemies. To get exposed, you needed to run the Devourer. So it basically was a loop. If you had all pieces of the set, you would have all the debuffs, and all of the items would unlock their special heightened power. In this set, the Devourer was probably the best piece of the set, visibly. Throughout the entirety of the game, the Devourer was perfect for bleed teams because this was the hardest working weapon in the game. I've said it when the game was live, I'll say it again now. The Devourer did its job to its fullest. Blood Curse, chance to perform a follow-up attack when an ally attacks a bleeding target, chance to counter when a bleeding enemy attacks an ally. I think these two right here had the higher chance of proccing more than any other proc chance in the game. I relied on the Devourer heavily for PvE and bleed teams. I think it was one of the things where the game says it does something, and it really consistently does it. It does hit all enemies, so if it countered somebody, if you had a tactician agent and somebody on the enemy team was bleeding and they attacked you and you went to counter it with the Devourer, because it hits the enemy team, the Infiltrator would fire back. Slight problem, but other than that, the Devourer was amazing. But the hidden secret was the Chalice of Souls. Let's go ahead and talk about this and explain why this was so busted. So it was a quick action item that you cast on a member of your team, and you did something called phylactery. If you're familiar with MMOs and RPGs and everything, you might, or D&D, you might know that phylactery is kind of like a Harry Potter Horcrux. It was something that a lich would bind part of their soul into, and if you quote-unquote killed the lich would just come back because his soul was in the phylactery. And it would just pop back up from the phylactery and like, hello, I'm back. That's kind of what the item did in the game, except when you cast it on a teammate, they became the phylactery. And when they were about ready to take their turn, the agent comes back. And you might say, well, that's a very weird application. That seems very niche. That seems very low chance. It sounds like you're assuming the agent might die, and then hopefully the person you cast it on doesn't die before they get their turn. How can you rely on that? That sounds really, really crazy. Well, later in the game, it wasn't particularly crazy, because you had a companion piece in the Phoebe Denrock, aka the corned beef. So 11 Spec Ops later, with Blade, came the Hunter set. And the Hunter set featured the Phoebe Denrock, or the corned beef. What the corned beef did was, if your health was high enough, you could suicide your agent and kill a member of the enemy team outright. So, unlocks Banish if the agent health is above 60%. So what Banish would do is it would essentially be like, if you played a Final Fantasy game, you know those little flame balloons, and they would blow up and they would suicide and they would do really, really heavy damage, and blue mages could learn them. It is the exact same thing. If you were running another piece of the Hunter set, you could target an enemy team member and outright kill them. No matter what their health was, no matter what was going on, you could banish them, but you banish yourself. So you would think it's a one-for-one trade, except that is not the case with the Chalice. The Chalice broke the rules of resurrection. Here's what we're talking about. So, I showed you before, Phoenix, Angel, Valkyrie, they all had the ability, including some agent gear, to resurrect dead members. None of the resurrects would work against an agent that killed themselves through the corned beef. The reason being, and if there were any Magic the Gathering players among you, you might kind of get the concept over here. There's the graveyard, and then there's exiling. Exiling means a card leaves the playing field. It actually leaves the game. Like, open a window, throw the card out the window, and shut it. That's what an exile is. Whereas a graveyard, it just goes to the corner of your play mat and sits in the graveyard, and there's a lot of utilities that could bring things out of the graveyard. Zombie decks, or Unearth. I forget what was the name of the very famous card that did it, but there was a very, very well-known style of black Magic the Gathering decks where you would put very expensive things into your graveyard, like by discarding them, and then cast a cheap Unearth, or I forget what was and you would bring them out of the graveyard for not their casting costs. So you would put like big 5, 6, 7, 8 mana multicolored dragons in the graveyard that you couldn't even cast because you don't carry that mana, and then you cast Unearth and they're on the playing field basically for free. That's what the graveyard is, and that's what normal death was in Marvel Avengers Alliance. It was the equivalent of going to the graveyard in Magic the Gathering, but a banish was something different. You put the enemy target and yourself literally out of the game. They didn't exist anymore and had no chance to be interacted with except for the Chalice of Souls. So back in 2016 on my stream, we sat, excuse that loud truck going by, we sat on stream many times and tried to find resurrection effects that would actually bring you back if you killed yourself on the corned beef. The truth is, there wasn't any. You couldn't do it. So people, if you look down through the comments here, the comments kind of end in 2013, although there is one in 2015-16. And here somebody's using it to work with the Rudamaroth, but nobody really knows what to do with the Chalice until the corned beef came around. And then again, people still really didn't know the tag team over here. So if we take a look over here, let's look at the comments to the corned beef. There's a bug which allows the Chalice of Souls to resurrect the agent after banish, and it's still not patched. Does it work with Valkyrie's Deathwatch or the Staff of Return? No. But this was kind of a bug. There's an annoying bug at the moment. If you use this gadget, all multi-function gadgets are locked out. Plus, you would not have a chance to use Phoebe Denrock twice in a single battle if you wait for the cooldown. Yeah. So, I don't know if that's a bug or not, but quick actions would not function properly if you came back from the Phoebe. This guy gets it. As a Chronaldo, I definitely remember from when I used to be very active on the wiki. This guy posted a lot, and he caught on. He knows about this. But let's go ahead and take a look at it in action. You'll see here in my history, there were 2 suicide-based teams that I did. The first one that I did, Just Like a Suicide, which is Soundgarden song, I was using Blaster Blowup. If you don't remember what Blaster Blowup was, there was a period of time in the game, as you can see, 5 years ago, so it was somewhere in 2016, April of 2016, there was a style of play called the Triple Blaster Blowup. That's when the enemy ran 3 blasters with the ISO that says they explode when they die. And each explosion did 30 to 33% damage. So basically, the enemy team would run Despair. They would put Despair on your team so you could not heal. And then 3 people would blow up and you would lose because they were each doing 33.3 something damage. And it would be enough to kill your team every time. You would think you would only have 1% life left because 99%, no. It killed you. And it was a viable tactic that people like myself and Kingfisher spoke out on and said it was utter trash. And finally, Playdom did fix it after that season and made it only do maybe like 25% damage so that you did have the chance of living, and they knocked out that strategy. But in the first video, what I did, you'll notice the Vampire Sword, which is the Hunter set, you had to run this with the corned beef, otherwise you could not do the straight up kill. Combat Communicator, the Lantern of Doom, and the Chalice. The Combat Communicator was an attempt to go first. I didn't need it because the Vampire Sword did it. So, more on that in a moment. But you'll see what the team was designed to do. So, here's Spitfire. And Spitfire gets mental coordination from Psylocke. The enemy agent has magic warding, which at the time, the Phoebe was magic. So it would have protected against it. And we're going to watch where I almost kill Angrier. Now, I'm not protected. I'm not running a Mystic. I should have been running a Mystic instead of the Combat Communicator. So let's see. Okay, I don't seem to have it. So I put the Chalice on Spitfire. So now she has that rebuff buff. And then I banish Kurth. And watch what happens. Kurth dies, my agent dies. And it looks like Fatal Finish went off on my agent. So the Fatal Finish blew up Angrier. So Angrier was taken out by me basically exploding. Now the enemy agent has a scutcheon, because you'll see Scootum is there. So that's why I attack with the level 9 on Psylocke, which means I'm not going to get drained, but he is going to drain Spitfire. Now what I should do here is just pass. However, I think I do bring the agent back, yeah. See? Before Spitfire takes an action, my agent comes back. That's not supposed to happen. There is no other ability in the game that could bring my agent back like that. So if that was Angel, if that was Phoenix, if that was Valkyrie, and I tried to resurrect the agent in some way, shape, or form, I would not be able to. Now, sadly, in this particular case, that Skeptic winds up killing me. But here is another example. So here's a high power team. Spinu and Rocket Raccoon. We all know exactly what this team is designed to do. Spitfire goes for Rocket Raccoon and wipes the floor with him. But he had Fatal Finish, so we took a little bit of damage, but this is not Triple Blast or Blow Up because Spider-Man Noir is a generalist and the enemy agent is a bruiser. Spider-Man Noir gets his little preemptive attack over there and dies. In this case, I am going to banish the enemy agent and we're going to win the match. So we're not going to see me resurrect, but we've already seen it. So I'm just going to suicide right into the enemy agent despite the grace note. And game over. Doesn't matter what his hit points were, immediately taking out. I adapted that strategy later on to make use of the Tactician ISO. So, if I can find it easily, there was an ISO in the game that said if your agent is a Tactician and they die, they give tactical tendencies to the entire rest of the team. Let's see. Was it Fatal Quickening? Yes. When knocked out, all allies gain an extra turn. So that was one of them. And Reaper's Turn. When knocked out, all allies gain tactical tendency. So essentially, it turns your entire team basically into tacticians where they get extra turns. That's what I did in this particular setup. So you noticed I am running the Mystic now, and I'm not running the Combat Communicator, and I'm not running the Lantern of Doom. I'm running the Falb. What the Falb was the Force of Life Blade. It says that I start combat phased, and I start combat immune to debuffs. This is a much, much smarter setup over here. But the Phoebe, the Vampire Sword, and the Chalice of Souls are still present because they are the meat of this little broken combo over here. So, let's see what the first battle was that I did over here. Okay, so Electron Beta Ray Bill, you guys might know of this team as the team that crashed the game. This was a team that used, there's the Ionic Devourer, that was used to put despair on people when they were running Triple Blast or Blow Up. But this team here was used by people for a little while that wanted cheap wins because it would crash the game And anytime you crashed attacking a team that did this, you suffered a loss and they gained a win. Playdom cracked down on people using this particular bug. So, notice it was Null's turn, but then I jumped ahead. That's because of the Vampire Sword. That's what the Vampire Sword did, and that's why I don't need the combat communicator for this particular thing. So, I'm going to Chalice of Souls, the character who is the furthest away in my team's order, which is going to be Angrier. I think I'm going to pick Angrier on this one. Yep. So a Chalice of Souls, Angrier. That means he cannot lose his buffs, and I will resurrect from the phylactery when Angrier gets his turn. I'm trying to see who I want to take out over here. Honestly, I should take out the enemy agent because of Scudam. This way I can do melee attacks, and Null won't get drained. I wonder who I'm going to pick. But Beta Ray Bill was very, very powerful at this point, so it looks like I picked the power character. Alright, so Beta Ray Bill is dead. And now Angrier and Null get a whole bunch of extra turns because of the ISO that my agent was running. They essentially became tacticians. So they immediately have an extra turn, and they have multiple turns. That's why Null is twice in the turn order, and Angrier jumped from one of the last characters in the round to getting a turn. So now watch what happens. Angrier goes to use a turn, and my agent comes right back. Generally, having the agent dead for a little while is not too bad, because if they're dead, they're not going to suffer any debuffs the enemy team's going to put out, but Angrier jumped so far ahead, I wasn't dead particularly long. So now, I'm up 3 characters to 2. And I apparently am thinking about what I'm going to do over here, so I'm going to up the playback speed a little bit. Attack the enemy agent. Notice Angrier still got his turns. That's because of the ISOs from when my agent died. I should not attack the enemy agent because he's running Scudam. Yeah, better to attack the blaster. Oop, follow up. So now the meteor stacks were dropping on the enemy agent, which is good. Stamina drain. And let me put this back to normal. Yeah, it's a little bad for Null to be doing that because of the Scudam drain. But you can see how fucking crazy this setup was. It was a really, really good setup. So this is a meteor stack team we're facing on this one. Enchantress is there to cause meteor stacks after Null does his ground pound, and they are really hefty. And look at their hit points. They're 10k over what I was. So in this case, I should take out Null, honestly. Because Null has Scudam, and Null is going to try and set up for the meteor stacks. It's honestly better if I take out Null on this one. I don't know what I'm going to do. Alright, looks like I'm taking out Null. Makes sense. So now I'm dead. And Null jumped the turn order. And now my agent's back. And what's cool about this setup for my agent is that with the Fulb and the Vampire Sword, I have non-quick action items that I can use and are beneficial to the agent because they will restore hit points. And as you can see, I come back very, very low on hit points over here. Now, I haven't watched this, so I would imagine I would beat this team. Ooh, extra turn. And Angrier keeps powering up because Enchantress keeps casting magic, so Angrier keeps... Woof! Wow, that's a really big hit on Enchantress. And he keeps getting extra turns. Isn't this great? Isn't this whole setup busted as hell? Alright, so we're going to do the summon, which purges. So I think if I remember correctly, that means Enchantress won't have her infiltrator abilities anymore. Purge, yes. Removes class effects. Now that summons was melee. Believe it or not, the Succubus summon over there is melee, so if you were to cast that on somebody who had Scudam, you would cause a drain, unfortunately. And the thing is, believe it or not, Angrier could actually heal my agent if I wanted to. I can drop the Cleansing Flame on him if I was really desperate for a heal there. Instead, I used the ability that restored everybody's stamina. Man, Null did not like that. Wow, Null is really going to town on Enchantress over there. That... Somebody call an ambulance, but not for me. So there's Twisted Flames, and now my agent is back to nearly full health after suiciding in the beginning of the match. Now, this is definitely a magic-oriented team, because he used a scroll. He was trying to get meteor stacks. That's really, really apparent over there. It is a lot of debuffs that I'm contending with over here, though. But he's getting drained for all of his efforts over here. He's getting a lot of feedback on him. Yeah, I don't have to worry about Scudam because Scudam was on the enemy Null, so we know it's not going to be on the enemy agent. The dude was dead anyway. His meteor stacks were crazy. So there it is, guys. There is the most busted item in Marvel Avengers Alliance history, the Chalice of Souls. What you did there, or what I did there with the corned beef, is not something that's supposed to be allowed to happen by the resurrect effects of somebody like Phoenix or Angel and Valkyrie. So let's go and take a look at them over here. Phoenix Fire, I think it was Cycle of Life for Phoenix Fire. Yeah, so somebody has to die. Actually, that would activate for her. Is she would get Cycle of Life if your agent did that and died like that. Cleansing Fire. Yeah, Phoenix. Was it the White Crown one that had the resurrect? Yes. So, if you tried to corn beef with Death and Rebirth, it doesn't matter. You still die. Because, again, you're not going to the graveyard. You are going into exile. Same thing for Angel. If you were to look at Angel, and I believe... Was it Impositu? Next time this character would be KO'd, they're instead healed. Yep, same thing. Doesn't work. Does not protect against the Vanish. And if we were to look at Valkyrie... Deathwatch. Next time this character would be KO'd, instead they're healed to 25% health. Restores health watch if it restores health if Deathwatch expires without triggering. So, none of these protect the agent from dying when you try to Phoebe out. If you try to use the corned beef and you have any of these protections, you still go away because, again, you're not going to the graveyard. You are going to Exile Land. However, the Phylactery, if you really, really think about it, it actually makes sense if you're thinking of, like, classic RPG and D&D rules. The reason why this works is you're leaving behind a buff on somebody who still exists within the plane of existence. You are implanting them as a living Phylactery, as a living Lich soul keeper, as a living Horcrux, as it were, kind of really like the whole plot of the Harry Potter movies. You are allowed to come back as long as the phylactery person exists. If this person dies before they get their action, well, then you're screwed. You're not coming back. But you can come back from exile because you've implanted a literal nugget in somebody, and when they get their turn, that nugget still exists, and you're brought back to life from no matter where you are in the universe. So it actually does make sense. So maybe Playdom would never consider this a bug, and maybe Goofy would never consider it a bug and never change the rules on this, because in a way it makes sense. So there you go, guys. For all the people who thought it was the Cosmic Cube, I definitely apologize for that. I understand where you were coming from on that one. However, there is something you guys should know about... Hi, you want to let me type? Well, okay, it's not letting me type. Let's get to a different page. Alright, search. M1. Okay. For some reason, every time I click over there, it won't actually let me search. So let's get to a completely different page. Maybe if I go there. Huh, that's weird. The cursor is just straight up disappearing. Anyway, with the Mystic, the reason why the cube is not as busted as you think is because the Mystic actually shut down the cube, and the cube shut down the Mystic. They had a very interesting relationship between the two of them, and I'll explain why if you're not familiar with it. The Mystic causes obsolete tech. The cube was tech. So, here is the relationship between the two. If somebody was running a Mystic Shroud, which means they cannot be debuffed, using the level 1 of the cube, Black as Void took the buff away. So now they can be debuffed. Interesting synergy between the two. The synthetic cube counters the Mystic, or the Mystic Shroud. However, the Mystic Shroud, because it causes obsolete tech, and the cube was a tech item, although it's not actually saying it. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, alright, this is right. See? Tech. It's not on the piece of gear, it's on the ability. You would not be able to use any of these items because they were all tech. So, the cube countered the Mystic Shroud from the Mystic, and then the Mystic turned around and countered the cube. So that's why I don't consider the cube broken in an overpowered sense, and why I don't consider the Mystic broken in an overpowered sense. These two countered each other. But the corned beef over here, you've seen it in action, and all you need to do is watch these two videos and you'll see just how deadly it is. So this first one, just like a Suicide, used the Blaster Blow Up ISO, and Team Tactical Suicide used the Tactician ISO to create multiple turns for friendly characters. I do very much want to try this with the Power of 4, which I think I maybe never actually got to drop. Maybe once, I don't remember. And I definitely want to try it with the Scroll of Aknazak. Alright, I guess we're going to do that. So, are we going to do this again? Yeah, we're going to do this again. Alright. Let's refresh the page. There we go. The Scroll of Aknazak, or the Scroll of Uncle Zack, as people remember it, was a 4 ability scroll that was designed to take place over 4 turns. And in the 4th seal, when you use it, it's similar to Angel's buffs, is that all allies get 2 turns immediately, and you get last breath. You take 2 turns, and then you explode. I think when you use this, because you get 2 extra turns, if you were to phylactery somebody, you could come back from the Scroll of Aknazak. And I think you can come back from the Power of 4. So I cannot wait until we get a full version of Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux and put this testing out there in the world and actually try and do this, because I think it will be fucking hysterical. And if you remember, this one, the 4th seal, turns the background of your screen into basically hell, which, in my opinion, it always kind of reminded me of this. It always reminded me of the Isle of the Damned from Chrono Cross. That's what that background always reminded me of. And anyway, I cannot wait until I have the Scroll of Aknazak in my hands, the Power of 4, and that phylactery, because I think it'll be fucking hysterical. Anyway, that's the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was worth the wait. Sorry to all of the cube guessers. You might be a little bit disappointed there, but I hope you got to learn something about the history of the game as it existed in spring, early summer of 2016, as we were dealing with Triple Blaster Blow-Up and the Electro and Beta Ray Bill and Agent crashing loadout that they did. See you guys.